I'd also like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting and to acknowledge their elders past and present. And as Ian indicated so eloquently, our connection to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, the First Nations people of this country, is a very important part of Maradulu Budyari Gumul, the Sydney Partnership for Health, Education, Research and Enterprise, SPHERE. When Chris invited me to come along and join Ian to say a few words, I was very enthusiastic to do it. It wasn't simply an opportunity for two Vice-Chancellors to be here this morning to talk about SPHERE and to encourage you to make the most of the conference you're in at the moment, but it was to demonstrate, I felt, an important need to demonstrate the commitment we make from Western Sydney, from our university, but importantly from our region, to SPHERE and to what we have created. I also wanted to have an opportunity to publicly thank Ian for the work he's done. There have been many people involved, there's no doubt about that, and I do acknowledge Les and Chris and the work they've done and the board that has been put together for SPHERE, but it was the early work that Ian did coming from the UK and from the work he'd done at Manchester to come and discuss with us what are the opportunities for us to work more closely together, to make collaboration real and to actually ensure that we invested in that collaboration. We didn't wait for investment from other sources. We found resources of size and scale, and the $20 million plus that's been committed as seed funding over 5 years is a wonderful demonstration of that. But to indicate to us just what was possible from his perspective in collaboration, and I think we're delivering that so quickly and so well, and I wanted to congratulate Ian and UNSW, but I also wanted to congratulate the LHDs who are an important part of this, along with universities and the MRIs that are all part of the SPHERE family. But I do want to acknowledge the two great local health districts that are absolutely crucial to this, and to emphasise something that Ian touched on. All of you in the room, I know, are committed to research, education, professional practice across our partner organisations. You're all committed to improving health outcomes, to delivering better health care and to generating economic benefits, but you're also, I think, committed to doing the rapid translation of research into the clinical setting. And that's where the important role is played by our local health districts. And in the context of Sydney at the moment, the Greater Sydney region at the moment, and Western Sydney particularly, but the Greater Sydney region, the investment being made by the New South Wales government in health facilities and infrastructure is enormous, alongside many other investments they're making. And of course that brings with it great responsibilities on those of us involved in not just the research dimension of how to improve the health outcomes of our region, but the health workforce, the development of the health workforce of Sydney and Western Sydney in particular. So I wanted to emphasise that. I wanted to emphasise that collaborations like SPHERE are incredibly important to Western Sydney as a region which will grow substantially over the next 30 years, from 2.2 million people now, as Ian indicated, to around 3.5 million by 2040. A recent report in the Sydney Morning Herald by Kate Orbison and Eric Bagshaw noted that the next decade would see the full force of the post-war baby boom start to impact on the state's health system. Increasing life expectancy, coupled with a declining fertility rate since the early 1970s, is creating a population with a record high proportion of retirees. The number of Sydney residents aged over 80 will almost double in the next 10 years, according to population figures. The top-heavy age mix will put greater strain on acute and preventative health services, which are geared towards combating the rising tide of the so-called lifestyle diseases, including obesity, diabetes and heart disease. Sydney's chronic disease hotspots in the west and the southwest will see the biggest population rises and carry the biggest burden. Recently, Danny O'Connor, the Chief Executive of the Western Sydney LHD, predicted, and I quote, "The rising tsunami of diabetes in Sydney's west would overwhelm hospitals within 15 years. Our students, educators and researchers are on the ground in the west, and we agree with Danny's assessment. Our university is trying to plan ahead for those pressures. In many instances, we've tried to predict them and we've adjusted our research, education and collaborative footing accordingly. But SPHERE is critical to that. Partnerships like SPHERE and our own Health Research Institute, our Marks Institute, our entrepreneurial activities are all pivotal in preparing for the increase in the scope, the complexity and the rate of health conditions in our region. The challenge for Western, our university, is not so much knowing what's coming and how to address it. Ours is a challenge defined by the level of resources, commitment and vision we can generate in our government, industry and, most importantly, community partners as we look ahead. Sphere proves, Ian's just outlined, I think, quite a compelling and impressive list of achievements already from Sphere, and it's outstanding. And I'm so proud that our university is a partner in Sphere. But it proves that informed, constructive and broad collaboration brings positive results. It's a successful collaboration in an era when disruption threatens to disperse, dissipate and undermine the capacity of sometimes competing organisations to cohesively plan for, engage and anticipate future challenges. And isn't that what it's all about? For those reasons, it deserves to be not simply sustained, and as Ian said, for the long term, but strengthened and expanded along the way. We're extremely pleased to be part of Sphere. I'm extremely pleased to be here this morning to join Ian on the stage to welcome you to this conference. I know you'll get an enormous amount from it. I can assure you, alongside UNSW, UTS, the MRIs, and importantly the LHDs, we are here for the long term, and I share with Ian the desire to see Sydney as a top 10 in the world in the biomedical sciences, but in particular to be known for the rapid way we can translate research into the clinical setting and to make a difference in our hospitals and in our communities, because if we don't do it now, we're going to have some difficulties over the next decade and beyond. So thank you and enjoy the conference.